Good day, my good YouTubers. I hope you're all well and whatever. Today, I actually wanted to answer a question on what flavor of Linux I use and why. To really understand why I use or what distribution I use and why, suppose we've got to take a little look at history and see why I've come to use the distro that I use. I've sort of written down most of the stuff that I'm going to say in this video, so I don't end up going all over the bloody shop, blah 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 blah. But anyway, here is why I use what I use. During the 80s, I used Microsoft Windows. Began my journey using MS-DOS version 3, which is actually probably wrong because Windows wasn't around then, but it was the Microsoft MS-DOS, which also, most of the time was contained on a floppy disk. Hard disk drives were expensive, so unless you were rather rich, most people could not afford them. Needless to say, Intel's CPUs were not that expensive. It's a big difference to the way it is today. With Intel chips, they seem to be more expensive than hard drives, which is a bit odd. It's a bit of a turn on its head. Microsoft, although they never invented DOS, was actually a great bit of software. The one thing to understand when we're talking about DOS is that it had no GUI, a graphical user interface. It was built up of a program called command.com, what many people today see as the Windows shell by typing CMD in the start run box through the start menu of Windows. Microsoft really did move fast with their products. Before we knew it, Microsoft had a GUI called Windows already out, which I thought looked a lot better than the Mac OS. Obviously, as I say, Apple Mac produced their Apple, I think it was 2 and whatever like that, which was interesting, but I didn't like it. The Windows operating system seemed to be more, I suppose, fitting, to me. But anyway, that said, it was very unstable. So Windows was used for applications needing a mouse like CorelDRAW. I remember buying the first version of CorelDRAW version 1. The box was so heavy you could feel the quality in the product. The majority of the box was a huge great manual and clip art book. They were the days that software companies provided a great product. Of course, now all we get is a CD, DVD and a license code. Manuals cost extra. Considering a software package like CorelDRAW can cost well over £1,000, not including the manual anymore seems criminal to me. Even Microsoft did the same with Windows 3.1, and now you're lucky to get a getting started guide. Which brings me back to the subject in hand. Microsoft used to have a great big manual in their box too. One that you could study, learn and utilize the entire system using the Microsoft operating system. As I said, now you are lucky if you get a getting started guide. Towards the end of the 90s, approaching the millennium, I had become sick to death of Windows crashes, Windows updates locking out my system when I needed to get things done ASAP, network security failures and more. Windows became a challenge in itself. I spent more time trying to hack the OS just to get it working, removing AOL advertisements, pre-installed applications that were just plain malware. Towards the end of the 90s, approaching the millennium, I'd become sick to death and blah blah, I've already read that bit. My apologies. How Microsoft allowed this malware to be embedded into the Windows installation CD is beyond me. Again, nothing has changed. It's still the same, if not worse, today. By 2001 I had enough. I had always used GNU Linux as a secondary operating system, the famous dual booting. At this point I really needed something to change my world around from wasting my time on a Windows OS that any and all work I had done to get it working was being stolen by Microsoft as feedback for their new products. They give me and others who also do the same thing no credit, no offers, no nothing. Just a cheeky advert and off they went to make billions more. That is when I made the choice to put my effort into the GNU Linux software and get it working. That way, instead of my hacking going to waste making Microsoft big bucks, now my efforts went into a global project that benefited millions. Seriously, if I am not getting paid for it, I might as well benefit the world rather than a corporation. Maybe you can call this my awakening, but based as I was so young, I wanted computer games. We all know Windows can deliver that, until wine matured a bit more, and now Steam comes to Linux, which works perfect, I must say. I originally chose Red Hat as my primary OS at first, and I own the last ever version of Red Hat 9. After this became enterprise products and set the Fedora project as what used to be Red Hat in the open source GPL version of the OS. I did not like this, not to mention I started seeing the frustration of Microsoft products in the RPM, which is the Red Hat Packet Manager. The problem began when I wanted to modify the code and install it. The RPM had some quirky, annoying, painful methods to do that. Red Hat had their own directory structure, so if you wanted to download a vanilla source, which is the code for the Linux kernel, for instance, which is untouched, we refer to those as the vanilla source, basically unadulterated, nobody's modified it for their own distribution or anything, it's vanilla. Then I would run into problems. The vanilla source code expected directories and libraries to be located at specific locations, but Red Hat had moved them about, meaning I had to change a lot of the symlinks, kernel headers, GCC compiler parameters, and so on. Worked great though if you only wanted to install via the RPM manager. In 2002 I bought a new computer. I had worked till my fingers were red raw on labour-intensive jobs to save up enough money for a Xeon workstation. I did it and built my first ever workstation using the Titan Thunderboard and the Intel Xeon 3.2 GHz chips, which were the Pentium 4. I believe they were the Prescott family. Back in this day, I was a big ATI fan, so I used the FireGL X1. That was a big mistake. It was said to support the Linux kernel, so all was supposed to be good. Not. Red Hat was now in full test mode with me, and Red Hat failed abysmally. I spent hours digging through code. I had to venture into what was totally new at the time with the Xorg X11 server, to hack the damn thing so I could get the ATI-FGLRX drivers working. Anyone who knows this madness back in 2002 onwards, I'm sure will know how painful it was to get anything working with the ATI graphics cards. The FireGL cards particularly. I joined the Xorg project to hack this ATI stuff, and oh man, now that was a mess. Red Hat for me just could not keep up. They were releasing kernel versions too slow in the name of compatibility, so I just got fed up with having to spend my time hacking the Red Hat OS at the same time as developing the Xorg stuff and hacking the ATI driver all at once. Too much, as one would say, just too much. I needed a distro that could allow me the full freedom to compile, modify, change, delete aspects of source without restriction as so I could get the job done. All this before I could even use my computer properly. Sounds like the 90s experience of Windows, does it not? This is when I found Gentoo. Compile from source code, but that is not what actually interested me in it. In fact, the compile from source frustrated me, thinking, oh God, now I have a new problem to just install it before I can get back doing what I want to do. Oddly, I put it off and continued with precompiled distributions, which all failed. Then Christmas of 2002 I took the leap and thought it's time to take the bull by the horns and do this. I ventured into Gentoo head first, like a diving jump into a dry swimming pool. It took a long time, but wow, what I learnt, what I achieved, and the freedom, well, just amazing. Now I had full control over everything. Subversion, although, was the most painful of all. Subversion is a source code distribution platform. It allows source code to be downloaded and uploaded with changes, etc. You keep track of the changes, versions, and so on. But it is murderous to use and maintain the source code. May God bless Linus Torvalds for developing the Git. And no, that's not an insultive term for a person. That's actually a replacement for Subversion, or a slightly different method of doing things called Git. Now I don't have to worry about things, and it's true that I don't. Changes are easily put and pulled. Someone else can choose to use my changes or not, as they see fit. They can just pick and choose what they want, what they don't want, and so on and so forth. I don't actually have to worry about updating versions or anything else like this. It sort of does it. Someone else does it. You know, if they want it, they can take it. That's basically the idea of it, and Git works well with that. So thank you, Linus, for providing a nice method of distributing source. Anyway, moving on. Gentoo has provided a platform that not only works, it allows hacking, debugging, freedom, and more. One of the best features is when we have a broken e-build. We can just open up the code, as the code is the program as such, change it, then re-build the e-build, which generally means we modify whatever source we need to modify, then we turn it back into an e-build from one small, very quick command. We assign it a new checksum after we've modified it, because obviously it's been modified, which means it's not going to verify its checksum. So we create this new checksum, and then we just emerge it, and it installs as if nothing had been modified. Emerge is Gentoo's packet manager. Incredible software, as it pulls down the source code via an e-build file, as we mentioned above, defining a set of rules. It then downloads the actual source code, unwraps it, compiles it, and installs it all in one command. So changing the source code and wrapping it back up is as easy as 1, 2, 3, then emerging it as if no changes have happened. All this done securely and safely by yourself, because obviously if you've modified the source code, you know what you've modified, so therefore you can verify the checksum because you clearly modified it, so you know that physically you're the person in control. After all this, I managed to hack the ATI graphics driver. In fact, I became so proficient at hacking the driver that I always had my KDE desktop running. This gave me lots more time to hack Compiz, now known as Compiz Fusion, which is a merged version of Compiz and Beryl, two projects with the same goal, fused together making Compiz Fusion. Compiz was a challenging project as I managed to pull skill set I had learnt from the Xorg years before into hacking the Compiz to get it working. In fact, it was so much fun I discovered internal secrets of the FireGL driver, and ATI Radeon cards that I would have normally not known existed. Multi-monitor support was a big difference between genuine FireGL cards and Radeon consumer cards, and to today's day still exists as far as I know. It seems like ATI wanted advanced multi-monitor support to be on Linux for the FireGL cards, but not for the consumer Radeon type gaming cards. A dictated feature as far as I'm concerned, to get you obviously, or force you to pay more money for a professional FireGL card versus a Radeon card. Anyway, bygones be bygones. I hacked that and got it working. Old news, old story. Today I love the new integration of Compass Fusion into KDE, because KDE actually now has it fully built in, and is very seamless. Got a bit scary back in the 2006-2007 though, when Novel, who was finding some aspects of the Compass Beryl project, funding some of those aspects of the project, went all hush hush and closed the doors, locked away the code. The real dangers of the BST type licenses became apparent. Gain no royalty of money made from a BST type source code ever makes its way down to the contributors of the project. What we mean by these licenses is that they can take the open source project, compile it and sell it for their own profit without giving anything back to the project. They just take it, use it and flick you the birdie. Some say that this is the freedom that a company can exercise in the name of freedom. But what it really means is that they enjoy the freedom but won't let you enjoy the freedom, as they close off the source code, not allowing you to do as you wish. Not to mention the fact that other people who put hard work into that software don't get any of the proceeds from the sales that company has made from it. Sounds like Microsoft again. This is why the GPL version 2/3, as in version 2 or version 3 GPL, is the way to go. Yes, you are forced to distribute all the changes you have made with the product, even if you sell it. But that is the only way to ensure your freedom. Much love and big shout out to every developer, debugger, user and contributor of all kinds in the GNU Linux platform. There is so much code and advancements that have been made across this platform in the past 10 years. It's not a joke. Many people said to me years ago that the GNU Linux is for the tinkerer to play with in their bedroom, an OS for the student in their dorm rooms. I disagree strongly. It is a powerful global idea, just like Tim Berners-Lee came up with when he had the idea for the web. It's a powerful concept to deliver software as source code, not compiled binaries. This is why I use Gentoo, because of the freedom to control my computing in every way, albeit binary graphics drivers, which leave much to be desired, particularly Intel and ATI. Intel have changed over the past few years and put in quite a bit, but ATI still seem to think that the GNU Linux is just not priority. Nvidia, on the other hand, have jumped leaps and bounds. I recently, this year, pulled out a very old Pentium 4 machine that had an old Nvidia Riva graphics card. On installation using Slackware, which is a pre-compiled binary distribution, of course, I was able to find the binary driver to put the old card to good use in GNU Linux. Now that deserves a round of applause and much credit to Nvidia for providing that. ATI would have never provided that. I have 3 ATI cards that are currently useless due to ATI ceasing driver support for them. They continue to do it for Microsoft products, but not for Linux. They have a 3-year cycle now. After 3 years, they just detect the old card and tell you to upgrade. If that's not a form of dictatorship, then I don't know what is. So after all this work, hacking and so on, Gentoo KDE desktop /workstation without ATI products works perfectly. I have given up finally after 10 years of hacking ATI cards and moved over to NVIDIA. It's amazing how now it just works, and I can put my efforts into other projects like the Grub, Core Boot and the Freedom Box. If you don't know what these are, then go check them out. It's quite exciting stuff at the moment. A small note before I close though. Many years ago, in regards to the Linux kernel, it's the same way today, all applications were distributed in source code. There was never a precompiled binary. It was always source code. To install them, you had to configure, which is prep the code, compile it, which is build the binary program, and install it, put it in the right place for everyday use. This was the way it was, nothing more, nothing less. With the historic nature of Linux and GNU programs, source code is the natural distribution method. Today, Gentoo preserves that, so installing software is an automated process using a merge, as mentioned previously, to do the above automatically on the user's command. Gentoo is not as complicated as one may think. It is only your own mind holding you back, making you think it is complicated. Maybe it is the brainwashing from Microsoft, or maybe it is just you being lazy due to you becoming accustomed to having everything done for you. So what is the point in either paying Microsoft to provide you with an operating system that no one other than Microsoft can fix, or paying somebody to provide you with a Gentoo operating system that anyone technically minded can fix or learn how to fix? The moral to that story is, when you're buying a Windows operating system, you're technically paying Microsoft developers for the work that they've put into the Windows operating system. What you're generally doing when you're paying somebody to install Gentoo onto your computer is you're paying the labor time of that person who is installing it on your computer. But you also have the opportunity to not pay anybody and install it yourself, so you don't have to pay somebody else. So yeah, that's pretty much the particular differences between the two. I know which one I prefer. Only one difference between the two flavors, and we call the flavors the different types of distributions: Gentoo, Fedora, Red Hat, so on and so forth. Is that you have the freedom as a user to get anyone that knows how a computer works to fix your computer. You are not restricted to Microsoft. To me, that's a brilliant way of looking at things, if you ask me, because when you get a problem with a Microsoft operating system, if you can't fix it, then sometimes the only way to fix it is sometimes to actually completely reinstall the operating system, because system files have become that corrupt or damaged or whatever. There's no way that even the most technically minded are able to fix it. They would probably sit there for 3 days, sitting there trying to, archive or expand particular program files from the Windows operating system disk to, repair those files. And even that sometimes doesn't work because, Windows Update has different versions, or it's probably updated the system, so the file that you get off the CD won't match the correct version that's required for the system to run stably. So you have this humongous problem, and obviously Microsoft is the only people who can maintain that software, which means that you need Microsoft to fix it. So even with the best technical ability, unless you actually are Microsoft themselves, you have to sit and wait for an update to come out to fix it. To me, that's a big problem, because usually updates take about 3 months with Microsoft, in the best of cases, sometimes even longer. It has been known that problems have existed for nearly 2 years before they've been fixed. So that is really, really bad support in regard to their products. So, no matter how technical you are, sometimes you end up in a dilemma where that is the case. So you just have to constantly reinstall as such until that happens. With Linux, that isn't the case, because with the technical ability, you have access to the source code, you recompile the program, and you fix your computer within minutes, far less than maybe sometimes hours, depending on what program it is. Some programs are very, very big in size, so it's things like that. So to answer the question, to understand why I use it, that is why. And I use Gentoo, and that's why I use Gentoo. And it's, again, a preservation. It's a distribution of source code, where you can modify it, change it, and do what you want with it. So it's just the greatness of freedom. So as I say, before I finish off, as I say, I wrote here and put here, Gentoo is my primary OS, and I run Windows in a VirtualBox, which is true, because as when I need to, I have to run update programs to update device firmwares, things like, cameras or, camcorders, things like that. When a new firmware updates out, they have to be updated. Unfortunately, what seems to happen is the manufacturers or the camera, owners, whatever, they release the firmware update in a Windows program. They don't release any way of you doing it through Linux. So you have to use a Windows operating system to update your firmware on the devices that you buy, which I think is pretty annoying, to say the least. So this is why I run a Windows operating system on the rare occasion, probably once every 3 to 5 months, when a firmware release is released, just to run those update programs to update the firmware through the USB onto these devices. Which leads me on to my final section, which is what is with the Android firmware. The Android runs Linux, but phone manufacturers make Windows programs to update a Linux phone, but they don't produce a Linux update program to update a Linux phone. Seriously, what is with that? Just a pondering thought for you. Anyway, I hope that answers the question, and take it easy, my good YouTubers, and have a good one.